Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Ari Hirschberg, Manager, Digital Community and Engagement at the Exchange Lab. I'm talking with John Jordan, BC Digital Trust Service and Executive Director for the Trust Over IP Foundation. John has been working at the vanguard of digital trust and identity for many years, bringing his experience from the federal government to BC in 2016. We are continuing the conversation from the Digital BC livestream with Gillian Crothers on why digital trust and identity should matter to you. I was fortunate to work with John at the Exchange Lab on 1012 Douglas pre-COVID. When we offered the in-person tour of the lab, one of my favorite things to do was to watch John tell the story of his work with digital trust and share why it is important. John had a wonderful ability to be able to connect with people on the tour that wanted to get into the nitty-gritty of the work and speak the technical vocabulary that goes with it, and others, like myself and the bulk of the tour audience, that does not have the skill set or acumen and just want to understand why we should care. And John does that well. It was great to watch John share his work so everyone on the tour understood the value of why digital and trust and identity matters. We have some great questions we weren't able to answer on the Digital BC live stream for you today, so looking forward to the conversation. Without further ado, welcome, John. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, Ari, it's nice to be here and happy to continue the conversation.
Great. I look forward to the questions and answers. How can we address the risk of shifting from a trust model to a verification model, especially on disenfranchising individuals challenged to maintain credentials?
Thanks for that question. I'm going to try and answer, I think, some components of that question and sort of decompose it a little bit. So first, we certainly don't want to create a situation where we are, disenfranchising people. And I've heard this kind of question in a number of ways. For example, do we have a situation where we're creating a service for citizens and businesses that will require them to have, an expensive digital phone or something like this? And for sure, the answer is no. Government is going to continue to offer its services in a variety of channels, in person, on phone, online, and so forth, in a way that we do our best to include everyone that we can. Of course, we're going to make mistakes, and sometimes we make decisions that can exclude people for various reasons, but we listen and we try to make changes. So first, we're here to include people as best we can in a choice of how they would like to get their services. And one of the choices we would like to offer them is a situation where they can start to do things online in a way that is actually trustworthy. So today in the internet, we have the problem, and I've talked about it many times, and I mentioned it on the live stream, is that we have a digital service delivery model that includes our friend Mr. Login, which I brought up a few years ago. And what that means is that in order for us to access a service, we need to first have an account. So we experience this most visibly where those of us that are engaged in chatting with friends and others, we have a variety of apps on our phone. I think I have 7 now. I have Skype, I have Signal, I have iMessage, I have Teams, I have Rocket Chat, I have Discord, I have all these services. And why do I have all those services? Well, because some people and some businesses and communities choose their messaging platform, and the only way I can communicate with them is by having an account on the same platform. That's how we can see this. What's the problem with that? Well, one is that we're excluding people. So if we make a choice about a messaging platform or something like this as a government, and people choose not to participate in that, or there's some reason that they don't want to be a part of that, they're excluded. Second is the account owner of that service actually has visibility into who and when, and in some cases, what we're discussing with our friend or in the course of that, interaction. And that's obviously a privacy concern. So the work we're doing is to basically disenfranchise the login service. which actually I think is a good thing. And we'll be able to create direct connections to our friends, to our services, to government services individually, so that we can have confidential and secure conversations with that service or friend. And on top of that, where identity and all kinds of other, important documents, permits, licenses, accreditations, we can provide digital evidence to our peer that those things are authentic, that they haven't been revoked, that they haven't been changed, and they came from the proper authority. So this is the trust model that we're trying to introduce through a variety of technical means, and importantly, through what we call in the industry governance. But what that means is the policies and procedures that the technology is implemented under. So that's hopefully starts to answer that question. It's like we're moving from a trust model that undermines trust essentially towards a trust model that we hope will actually bring more people into the digital fold so they can experience confidential and private and safe conversations on the internet with their friends, family, and the services they choose to use, be they government or private sector. I hope that tackles that.
And to me, that's beyond exciting because it's one of those common conversations for the last, 4 or 5 years. It's like, I'm on these tools, but it's not secure. And that's everyone.
You have this sense like people, and I've talked to many people over the years, and people know that somebody's watching, but they sort of you just kind of put it out of your mind because, well, it's really nice to be able to talk to my friends and family. And in a lot of cases, it's nice to do things online. It's convenient to a certain extent. And so we just sort of choose to put it aside. But I'm hoping now that as government steps into this space and provides the kinds of services that it provides in person and the kind of trust that we sort of take for granted, especially in a country like Canada, where we can walk the streets in a way that we can generally feel safe. We can consume services from government that are, that we have confidence about, and we can conduct business in a way that we have confidence about. I mean, that's what we enjoy here. And we want to be able to enjoy those kinds of privileges and freedoms and rights online as well.
Agreed. Are you doing any user research now on how to make this understandable and usable for everyone?
Yes. I'll elaborate on that.
Great. That was a quick answer.
Yes. So that's a great question as well. And for sure, one of the things that I've learned, and if I could turn the dial back 5 years, is that we tend to talk about this, especially in the early years, in terms of the technological sort of artifacts that we were dealing with. So we talk about things like verifiable credentials and DIDCOM channels and things like this, sort of technological artifacts. And I think this is just natural in the way that we, as technologists, start to learn and understand things. Like I believe this technology arose from a deep concern for providing, private confidential communications. So the technologists and others that initiated this work years ago understand deeply the problems of the current architecture for the web. But we needed to learn how to talk about it in ways, and we still need to learn. And so today, like on our team, we have user experience folks. We have several of them, and they are working with early adopters. Primarily in our case, we're dealing with lawyers. So we have a real world use case that's happening right now. We have about 80 lawyers that are receiving their membership card, which is their proof of being a lawyer from the Law Society, digitally, storing it in a digital wallet, and using that to gain access to BC Court services online services so they can access documents about court proceedings and so forth, so they can serve their clients. And that group is getting is really great. Those parties have been really great working with us, and we're getting insights from them and using a variety of techniques, wireframes, stories, and so forth to gain insights there. At the same time, this is a new model, a new way of doing things online that that users won't necessarily understand right away and won't necessarily be able to provide traditional user experience type feedback. So we do have to do work on like how to tell stories better and so forth. And we are going to be working on that in the coming months as we roll out these services to government and business people and residents. So we're going to take what I call a respectful and responsible rollout approach. We're going to work with specific cohorts of people and businesses in relatively small numbers so that we can do that learning and we can make adjustments both to the story and to the technology and the digital products that we offer in the way that we can make it as simple and understandable as possible. And in the end, people can use it confidently. I'm going to use that word a lot. Confidence is what we're aiming for. And that is a multifaceted construct, that I think takes into account people feel included, people feel it's easy to use, they feel it's trustworthy, and so forth.
Yeah, I really like that you're working on the story now, because it's such a big change in the way people will work with online, that the story is so key on this big jump.
Yeah, I often talk about, I wish I could just delete the past 30 years of online experience, because we've actually trained people in ways that are actually not helpful. Like, the whole login, password, user account debacle, like we're going to make that go away. The whole sense that you're being surveilled and it's untrustworthy, now we have to undo that. We have to in some way walk that back. So we have a bit of work ahead of us.
Yes, you do, but at least the technology is there and the story could come.
Yeah, and just a quick follow on to that. The great news there is this isn't BC like out on our own. As you mentioned at the beginning, I'm part of the Trust Over IP Foundation, which is a Linux Foundation project. We have over 300 members now. We started out with 29 in March 2020 or so. May 2020 we launched, so we've grown, a lot. And there's a lot of activity in Europe, a lot of activity with our partner provinces, Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, Saskatchewan. I just had a call from Manitoba. There's many people starting to lean into this. Another fun fact, I had a email from the folks in Bhutan that I talked to some while ago, and they are in the third proof of concept for rolling out national identity and business services in Bhutan based on this model. New South Wales, just Israel, many other places that are exploring and starting to get services out to their citizens and businesses.
Oh, that's fantastic. There's been a lot of visionary thinking around how verifiable credentials can be used, but are there many production implementations we can learn from?
I guess I just started a lead into that question in the previous question. So, so one of the things I would say about that is that, and I think this is one of the values that I bring, is that I have always worked sort of in the business line, as it were. This job here in the British Columbia government is the first time I've been in a CIO office per se. When I came from the federal government, I worked for Acquisitions Branch, which is their procurement agency in essence. So like, I think 3,000 people that do procurement for the government of Canada. And I led the team that delivered buyandsell.gc.ca, which is their procurement portal for, tenders and clauses, legal clauses, and all kinds of things for buyers and suppliers. And that, again, is like, you come from a user focus, right? You come from who am I trying to serve and so forth. It's not about all the cool technology that we used, which was a lot of cool open source technology. But how is it you're solving the problem? And, in other experiences, I spent many years in support. So I worked for Alcatel, which is a large telecom provider. And I spent years providing, third level, so quite technical support to telcos around the world. So I think that kind of approach. And when I arrived in BC, one of the first things I did was go and talk to people in other parts of government, the small business groups, the folks in Service BC, and I developed really good working relationships, for example, with BC Registries and Carol Prest, and we've worked closely together for 5 years. And the point of this kind of long-winded explanation is that by working, I made it a purpose of this work to go out and partner with line of business folks so that we could discipline this work in the context of their problem. And that's how OrgBook arose. Being able to share verifiable data out into the open for all businesses registered in BC was done hand in hand with BC Registries. And it's now forming one of the cornerstones of their data sharing strategy going forward, and has proven to be an excellent tool for proving the technology. We've gone through many revisions of the underlying technology with the discipline of having a business service there. So I think the answer is that we are disciplining this technology with the sense of solving real world business problems. And in the coming months, I think you're going to see some really exciting new efforts from our team that are going to provide further evidence for that and are going to allow us to really, get things into the hands of people and start getting that user feedback and cohort-driven rollout that I mentioned earlier.
Well, I look forward to having you back on the Digital BC live stream in X amount of months when we can start talking about some of this new stuff as well.
Yeah, that would be great. We'd be happy to do that, I'm sure.
What are the potential connections between digital identity and IDs like vaccination passports?
So I alluded to this a little earlier. So the technological means by which we're going to provide residents and businesses with their data is through a thing we call a verifiable credential, which is just a piece of data that is wrapped in a special cryptographic envelope that allows us to give a business or a person their data, which is the key concept here, one of the key principles. And I think this might be a good time to mention that if you're really interested in what are the principles behind this work, you're going to want to go to the Trust Over IP Foundation website. So it's trustoverip.org, and take a look at the design principles document and take a look at the principles of SSI document, which outlines the technical and human trust principles that we're following as we design this technology. And one of them is to provide people with the data they need in order to do the things as they go about their personal and professional lives. And this whole model allows people to gain that data. And one of the data is digital identity. But that is just one little package, right? Like you carry around your service card, or people call it their driver's license, in your wallet. But it's accompanied by in some people's cases, quite a number of other cards. I used to just carry around 6, but no, but others carry around many more. And we have many other kinds of documents in our lives that are important, that mean something when we try to do some sort of activity, whether it's a rental agreement or a library card or an insurance paper or a health record or whatever. And all of these kinds of things are possible to provide to our citizens and businesses. And they can be used in combination with each other to prove to a service that they have, like, you can just think of it as, in very simple sense, like auto form fill, like all those annoying forms that you have to fill out your name and address for, and like, what's your date of birth and what's your, personal health number, whatever. You'll be able to provide all of that information through your digital wallet with just one button that says, hey, such and such a service is asking for the following sets of data. And as long as you have all those credentials in your wallet, you just push a button and it's safely transferred over to that service. They can perform the verification mathematical process to prove that it's, from you and you got it from the proper issuer and so forth. And you can carry on with gaining access to that service. And it's a long-winded answer to say that the relationship is the same relationship that you would imagine today in the physical world. So like, you have to provide your service card and the vaccination card together. In the future, it would just be one button and you provide that set of data together. So it'll be much more convenient. It'll be much, risks will be managed for all parties in a much better way. You'll be able to consent to sharing. And I'll add in one last really interesting piece, which is that, yes, you'll be providing data to other services as you do today. But the really interesting thing is that today, that data can be taken, like there's a breach of that service's database or so forth. Let's say they have your credit card and your name and so forth. That data can be taken and reused without your knowledge. In the future, when everybody's accepting verifiable credentials and they understand the value of that, even if your data is taken, it cannot be replayed. The only way it could be used is if they have control over your physical phone, which tends to be a very low probability situation. And that is going to mean that your personal data and your risk for identity theft is driving towards zero. And that's a future that we feel good about. And that's a future where you can interact confidently on the internet, knowing that your data is not going to be replayable. It's not worth anything on the dark web anymore.
It's so big. I do think, even though it's not into the security area, just having 7 less cards and that less weight in your wallet, like the wallets of the future are just your phone, which is so much, if you want to go that way, that's one thing.
Yeah. And I think that's increasingly the way, people who choose to use digital devices are going. I mean, before I used to go out and occasionally I'd forgotten my wallet and I was like, oh, I've got my Visa on my, on my phone. Or, you see commercials now for cars that have an app for the key. I mean, people really going to take care of their phone. I mean, we know that if people forget their phone, they come back. It's like they take care of that device and they lock that device down. So, I think for those that choose to do it, there's going to be a really nice convenience factor. And there's going to be, again, I think, a confidence factor that is going to, help propel this.
Yes, definitely. Has there been any interest from Indigenous peoples for how this could support self-determination and sovereignty? For example, citizenship registries?
Yeah, so, I mean, I also love that question. And for years, I've been it's one of these areas that I would love to see explored further. And I would love to hear from people who have ideas around this. Many years ago, I guess, after well, I guess we're not quite out of COVID in a certain sense, but after these past few years, it feels like a lifetime ago that we were together in the lab, Ari, and, that was a great period of time. And during that period of time, I did have several conversations with a few First Nations folks that had their own businesses and were looking into ways that they could have digital versions of the poorly named Indian card, governed under the federal acts and so forth. But this is the way that this is a means by which, their status is proven. I believe that for various First Nations have their own member cards and so forth, and there's voting rights and various other rights that are governed by their own government. And I see this technology and trust model as a way that they could, if they chose, step into a digital world and be like a digital First Nation. And I would love to see that would love to be involved in any kind of discussion around that. The technology that is being developed is all open source, so it's freely available to any group or person that wants to use it. So it's not like, the BC government has to be involved. It can be adopted and operated completely in a self-sovereign way. I mentioned the principles of self-sovereign identity. They, I believe, align quite nicely with, well, they I don't believe it. I mean, they definitely align with sovereignty because that's why British Columbia is doing it, as opposed to, some third-party large tech company, like that we would never want to cede our sovereignty to for our residents, government identity and other documents. So I wish I had examples, but I would love to hear from folks if they have ideas or are interested in this approach for First Nations applications. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Is there a place where people could connect on this with you or your team?
Yeah, for sure. We have a website now. It's digital.gov.bc.ca/digital-trust. That's got a generic email box on there. I mean, of course, you can just look me up in the BC government directory and send me an email. We live online in the Hyperledger world. If you're interested in that space, we're on the Hyperledger Discord server. I don't know if there's a place, Ari, where you can provide some links, in the description to this podcast.
You bet. This will definitely be in the show notes.
Yeah.
And people can just click to whatever they feel is the best place to connect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any final thoughts?
Well, I mean, I'm really excited about where we are at. I think this is going to be a very interesting year for this particular space. I see a lot of, I know we're engaged in a lot of interesting activity ourselves in partnership with several of the provinces. We're developing this technology together in the open, which is, I believe, an unprecedented first. We're all contributing to Hyperledger, Aries, and Indy components, so for the benefit of all. I see interesting signals in the industry, some first steps of consolidation and further rounds of investment in larger companies buying some of the smaller startups so that they can bolster their offerings in the area of digital identity and trust. I'm quite excited to see how it's unfolding, and really happy to be a part of it. And it's been really great, almost 6 years now, and hopefully a few more to get this really going.
Yeah, it's such a great puzzle to be working with. I would find it hard to stop myself because it's just it's so deep.
There's lots to it, but back to some of the questions. I hope in the end, it must be that it's just easy to use and of benefit to the individuals that choose to use it, and all that depth and complexity is just hidden away behind a nice user interface, just like all the other technology we use today.
Yeah, it's intuitive for us, but for the back end, it's a different story.
Yeah, and it has to stay that.
Well, thanks again, John, for taking the time to share your thoughts. To the listeners, hope you enjoyed this episode, Why Digital Trust Should Matter to You with John Jordan. You can connect with me at ra.hirschberg@gov.bc.ca or click the link in the show notes. Thanks for listening.